Hi everyone, it's Nikki and I am back yet again with these author questions. I know it seems like they're going on for ages, but there is the end in sight, the end of the tunnel is in sight, and I'm sure that when we finish them, I will certainly miss doing them, and perhaps you'll miss hearing them as well. Maybe I can find some other questions somewhere. Anyway, for today we're doing questions 55 through to 60, and let's kick straight off, shall we? Question 55. If your story became a movie or TV series, who would you like as one of your characters? This is something I do quite a bit. When I'm working on my characters and I'm thinking about how they look, how they move, how they dress, I do often have an actor in the back of my mind. I've certainly true that there's a piece that I'm working on at the moment in which there are three main male characters and one female, sort of two male leads and then a male and female secondary character. And I do have very strong ideas in my head about who would play them. For the two leads, I think it would be Ruth Carney and Daniel Gillies. And for those two secondary characters, Queen Latifah and Colin O'Donoghue. So I definitely do that. Another novel where I really thought quite carefully about who would play the characters is the Ragnarok Chronicles. I thought Ben Barnes would be Loki, and that someone like Lily James would play Cassandra. But I did plot out like the entire cast, all the secondary characters and everything, and it's on my website if you want to see. There is the list on there of my dream cast for that book. So, that's a few of them anyway. I won't drag on and do every single story I've ever written, but it is something I do quite a lot. It helps me get a mental idea of the character, particularly like when I'm describing their appearance and things like that. So, question 56. Apart from writing fiction, do you do any other creative works? Yes, I do. If any of you have been on my blog and that, you may have seen this, but I do sketching. I've never trained professionally, but I enjoy drawing, and I'm trying to improve and learn by myself as I go along. I mainly do portraits, particularly of celebrities or film or TV characters. I have a DeviantArt account, so I'll put the link in the little spiel below. But on there you'll find my sketches, some of my photography. I really enjoy photography, although it's not something I get to do that often. So some of my photos are on there. I write songs occasionally, the lyrics, and occasionally a bit of music to go with them, but my piano skills are pretty average, so sometimes I conceive a really great accompaniment, but I know I'll never be able to play and sing at the same time, so I keep it quite basic for my songs. But my songs I've got a couple on here on YouTube, but most of them are on SoundCloud just as audios, so I'll put the link to that as well. I sing, obviously. I play instruments, flute, piano. I've been teaching myself a bit of guitar. I also consider it creative that I like learning languages. I study quite a few foreign languages. Some I started at school, others I've been teaching myself just from books and with help from pen pals around the world. So that's something else I do. I do a little bit of cross stitch sometimes in the evenings, but it's kind of an on again, off again thing. Like I might have a little period when I try and do it a bit, and then I just don't get around to it for a few weeks, and then I'll come back to it again. I think that's probably it. Yeah, I think I've mostly covered everything there, haven't I? So yes, I like being creative. Any form of the arts, whether performing arts or just the arts in general, they all appeal to me. I've been in drama groups before, not so much in the last few years, but I used to. One of my performances is here on YouTube. You can see that if you want, me singing Keep the Home Fires Burning from one of my amateur productions. And I used to sing in choirs and do solos and things and concerts and things, but less since I've moved to Australia. I was in a choir for a little while when I first got here, but fitting it in with everything else has just been too much. So it's something I was more in my sort of teens and early 20s that I'm not doing quite so much now. So I'll stop there. I'll stop waffling. When you get me onto things I like doing, you'll never stop me. So I better force myself and move on to the next question swiftly. Okay, question 57. What is one question you hate answering about your writing that acquaintances ask you? Probably how much money I've made from it, because a lot of them know the amount of time I spend on it, and I think if most of them knew the monetary remuneration, I guess, that I get back for that time. They'd all be a bit shocked that I bother. But I do it because I love it. Of course, making loads of money from writing would be awesome, but you know, you'd be very lucky if that happens. So I think, you know, talking about the financial side is probably the hardest, or maybe also as a secondary one, when they have read some of my stuff and then want to talk to you about the sex scenes and that. You know, I have no trouble writing sex scenes, but having to then describe them and talk about them with family and friends and that tends to be a bit more nerve-wracking than just writing them for the world at large, if you see what I mean. Question 58. What are some online forums and websites you use to have discussions with other authors? I'm in a few groups around the place. I'm on Goodreads, although that is really more talking to readers, although there's a few author interactions on there. I'm on several groups on Facebook. I find it a lot easier to find groups for talking about LGBT writing than I do for mainstream writing, and I don't know if that's just because a lot of the other authors I know write LGBT, and so those are the websites that or groups that they're directing me to, and I'm just not seeing the others. But I mean, I'm on groups like Queer Romance Inc. and Queer Sci-Fi on Facebook, which are awesome. I'm also on a few writer support groups and LGBT writer support groups on there. Some of my publishers have Yahoo groups, which I don't go on there regularly, but I get the digest emails, so I keep an eye on the discussions there. So that's probably the main one. I do a little bit on Twitter. I quite like, you know, the weekly hashtags and things like One Line Wednesday, 2-Bit Chews and things like that. And I put up my own every week whenever I can, and I try and find a few minutes at least to check on other people's and like and retweet a few of those as well. But probably in terms of real chatting and answering questions and asking things, and it's probably Facebook is the main one, some of the Facebook groups that I use. So I think that's probably all of them at the moment. Question 59. Have you ever written a character so offensive that you hated or strongly disliked them? Again, that's a hard question. I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? You know, to themselves, none of the bad characters are bad in their own eyes. And as the author, you're meant to be understanding and seeing their point of view. So I don't think I've ever written anyone that I couldn't come to understand why they did the things they did. I mean, I've written a couple of baddies that are probably a little bit more two-dimensional in slightly shorter stories where you don't have time to build up that huge backstory about them. But in general, I like my baddies to have motivations and reasons and history. So they may not be great people, but in my mind at least, I know what made them that way. So I don't think I've ever hated them. I mean, I've created them. They're my characters, so I love them all. But obviously you maybe don't love them as much as your epic, Byronic, brooding hero, but you appreciate them, I guess, and the part that they play in your story. So I wouldn't say I've ever hated any of them. And the last one for today, question 60. What are your plans for Christmas Day? Now, this video, looking at my notes, is coming out in May. So talking about my plans for Christmas Day is a little bit strange. However, what I will do is tell you what I normally do on Christmas Day. Obviously, this has changed quite a bit since I moved from England to Australia. In England, Christmas Day was a really, really huge affair and a blowout dinner, so much food that you were completely stuffed, and then you'd go back and eat all the leftovers at tea time in the evening, and a huge hot meal, mulled wine, all the usual turkey and all that sort of stuff, loads of sweets. And Christmas would pretty much start around, well, we'd start opening the presents in the morning, and then guests would start to arrive around 11:30, 12 at the latest. You'd have lunch, and those guests would mostly stay, like, I mean, I'm talking sort of my nan, maybe a couple of aunts and uncles, and they'd stay until, you know, 9 o'clock at night or something. So it was a long day. Since I moved to Australia, I'm obviously having Christmas in summer, and it's been quite a different experience for me, and it doesn't feel like Christmas still, even after I've been here for 10 years. It's weird having Christmas when it's potentially 35 to 40 degrees Celsius, and we don't have that big, huge sit-down meal. The way my husband's family do it is it's more of a buffet. So we have cold meats, we have seafood, which is something we wouldn't have in England for Christmas. And it's more, you don't have that big, huge meal, it's more nibbling. So it's probably better for my waistline since I moved here. But the atmosphere is not quite the same, excuse me, as when you have Christmas and it's cold and you're singing about snow, you know, singing songs about let it snow in 40 degrees. It's just a little bit strange. So it never feels quite like Christmas, but we get up and Corey and I open up presents together. Then we'll go over around lunchtime to his parents, and or whoever's hosting that year. We hosted one year, and we'll have our buffet meal and spend a few hours together. And then sometimes we'll stay on and see people in the evening as well, but it's much more relaxed, it's not quite so formal, and there's definitely it's less involved, it's less around the food. I guess it's more just around catching up with family and having a beer, a bit of a barbecue or whatever. It's less around the big, huge sit-down meal. So this year I'm in Australia for Christmas. So that's what we'll be doing. It'll be a bit of a buffet. I'm not sure whose house that yet, but we will sort that out. And yeah, same as always. Exchange a few gifts, catch up with some people in the family we don't see as often. And that'll be my Christmas. So on that note, I will close this video, but I will see you all again next month. We still have 3 more months of this to go, and then we'll be finished with our questions. So I look forward to seeing you all again for questions 61 to 66 next month. Goodbye.